Trey, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Crazy weekend in Tuscaloosa with Texas and Alabama, but excited for another wild week of college football.
Not a great week of college football. This is one of our marquee matchups this week. I know somebody asked in the group chat or in the chat here if game day was going to be in Gainesville. They will not be. They will be heading to Colorado for that game to go see the Colorado State game. But Trey, I know that you're a little bit short on time today, so give us what we should know about Tennessee this week.
Yeah, look, it's going to be first off, I'll never pick Tennessee to beat Florida in Gainesville until they actually prove to me they can beat Florida in Gainesville.
They find really interesting ways to lose that game in Gainesville over the last nearly 20 years.
They have, but it was the Felipe game, and then it was
Felipe,
the Greer
Tyree,
Greer.
Big Ben, Jill, Train, something like that. Jim McElwain dialed up something. Antonio Callaway gets loose. Just a bunch of face-planted Tennessee coaches on the sideline.
Yeah, man.
It's such a hated rivalry between both fan bases and the players on the squads. They're all recruited by the same coaches. And this week, Tennessee, I was watching them from the press box. I had them on my iPad pulled up, and they're playing Austin Peay, and they look like a team that was on Austin Peay's level. They just didn't take them seriously at all. And Austin Peay made them pay for it. I mean, that was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. But look, this is going to be a different matchup because you've got a guy like Joe Milton who's still trying. Look, he's got a hell of an arm, but after watching it Saturday and going back, he's still trying to figure out the accuracy part. The best thing for him, in a sense, is that he has worked with these receivers for the last 2 years. The receivers that you're seeing now for Tennessee have been on the second string for the last 2 years. So the connection is there. When you look at something that I think Tennessee could take advantage of Florida, it's the three-headed monster at running back with Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, and you got Dylan Sampson. Those guys are quick. They're powerful. They can get up the middle. And if Cooper Mays plays this weekend, Tennessee's center, who's been out for the last month because of the surgery, the small surgery, if he can play this weekend, which I think he's given it a go, he dressed against Austin Peay. I think he plays against Florida. Then that changes the offensive lineup for Tennessee, where they're in a more comfortable spot now with their starting center. They can move a guy like Ollie Lane, over the left tackle if needed. But man, look, Tennessee's going to try to go fast. In the last time Josh Heupel was in Gainesville, it was a wake-up call for him. He took his veteran wide receivers. You all guys remember that. He missed a wide-open Jimmy Callaway. You probably don't remember the player, but he missed Hendon Hooker missed a player down the sideline. The wide receivers are all right attack. But that was the turning point game for Josh Heupel, that loss in Gainesville, because he took his three veteran wide receivers outside the bus and said, hey, look, we're going with you now for the rest of the season. This is all on you. We're not giving any more tryouts to players. This is on you. What they do, they go beat Missouri about 61 points, and you've seen what kind of success they've had since then. Saturday's a different animal. I mean, look, there are ways that Florida's offense could take advantage of Tennessee at the linebacker position without Keenan Pill. Tennessee lost its starting linebacker to a tricep injury. And I'm very curious to see, guys, how they're able to, after watching Florida, they do a lot of the backfield stuff, a lot of the swing passes, a lot of the dip downs. I'm very interested to see how Tennessee tries to control that. That's what stands out to me.
It's I covering Florida for a while. I saw Joe Milton as a junior in high school, Friday Night Lights. I saw him at Michigan. I saw him at Tennessee before he lost his starting job. He did he watched Anthony Richardson in the offseason, goes, man, all I have to do is like plant my feet and throw a ball 80 yards in the air. And they're going to start talking to me about like a dark horse Heisman. So like,
you got to flip too.
That's just a Florida thing. And Anthony Richardson, we do claim him in South Florida, was born in Miami. That's a South Florida thing. So that's just a natural, that's like leaving church. Got to flip down the steps, ready to go.
Yep, Milton's
like-
from Pahokee, so he had the flip ready to go. So first
But,
round is
like-
on deck, Trey.
Like, am I wrong in thinking like he's 23 years old? He's been in college as long as I have.
Yep.
What makes him different? I think I know who Joe Milton is. He's not Hendon Hooker. Now, I do give Josh Heupel a lot of credit, and I said before the year, if Joe Milton has that kind of season, then give Josh Heupel an extension, because like he is then just a quarterback whisperer, and the offense works. But like I don't see Joe Milton getting appreciably better in the accuracy department in his 5th or 6th year of college.
Here's what makes Joe Milton different. He's not going to be a Hendon Hooker, so people out there don't try to compare him to Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker was special. Joe Milton can be special, but the biggest thing that he had going for him, Nick, is that he's had 2 years now to sit behind Hendon Hooker and learn, first off, and then learn the offense. Get that down pat. That Josh Heupel offense is difficult to understand. The checks, the reads, everything you put into it. I think Joe Milton, he understands what he's supposed to do when he gets to the line of scrimmage. I can't say that he had that at Michigan. I can't say that he had that in his first 2 games at Tennessee 2 years ago. I think now he understands what he has to do. He understands if Squirrel White is giving him the signal on the far right side saying, hey, look, I can beat this guy on one-on-one. Okay, let's check off and go there. And that's the biggest thing to me. And it's also the running ability. You know, Joe Milton was, yes, he showed flashes at times that he can run the football, but they're now letting him scramble outside the pocket, which I think is key for Tennessee's offense. They cannot have him just sitting in the pocket and trying to make plays. It's not going to work. Florida will suffocate Joe Milton on Saturday if he just sits in the pocket. I think, overall, Joe Milton can be a guy that could lead the SEC in passing in yards. Okay. But I think what will potentially hold him back, it's not his fault, is that Tennessee really is going to try to offset this thing with a running game. When in the past, they really didn't have that. Even with Hendon Hooker, look how many times Hendon Hooker ran the football last year. They didn't trust. Jabari Small was hurt all last season with a shoulder injury. Jalen Wright was banged up at times. So now they actually have a running game, so you're not going to see as much, passing from Joe Milton in a sense of 40 attempts a game or something along those lines. So that's where if you're Florida, you got to take advantage of Tennessee. You stop their running game. You make Joe Milton have to throw the football in front of 90,000 fans on a Saturday night in Gainesville, and you make him uncomfortable. And if he gets so uncomfortable that things go bad, do we start to see Nico over the next 2 or 3 weeks? A lot goes into this game Saturday night.
Trey, what outside of physical capabilities that Joe Milton has Tennessee fans, and I'm not saying that you are convinced this way, has Tennessee fans convinced that he could be a Hendon Hooker? Is it because he's athletic, can run the ball, has a powerful arm? Because I've seen 6 years worth of Joe Milton stats, and Florida was recruiting him, and there was a big part of our fan base that wanted him 7 years ago, right? So over time, I just don't know.
I led that high.
Yeah,
that was my high.
There you go, Corey.
So I've
Get it off your chest.
I've got 2 questions.
I seen the vision before he got 4 stars. I was like, I went to a random camp. I was like, this kid got a fucking cannon, man. Like, who is this kid? And it was like Joe Milton. He's from Orlando, and I found out he's from Pahokee, so I had to jump on the bandwagon. I was trying to give him to Florida, and it didn't work out.
That's what Silk does. So I've got that question. A follow-up question is, what's convincing Tennessee fans, or is it kind of blind faith that because he has that skill set that he could do it? And then my second question is netting things out. Obviously, Tennessee had great wide receivers last year. They lose a number of them to the NFL in graduation. And then I know that you said that the running game has improved. How does that net out from last year's Tennessee offense with an improved running game, decreased wide receiver production, and all of that? Those are my questions.
Well, real quick, I don't know that Tennessee fans are sold on Joe Milton, especially when you've got Nico.
Well, they
sitting
were.
Sitting in the range.
See, and they are like they're sold on Joe Milton because Josh Heupel is sold on Joe Milton. Ooh. They trust Josh Heupel. They saw what Josh Heupel did with Hendon Hooker over 2 seasons, and Tennessee fans are like, well, wait a minute. If he can do that with Hendon Hooker for 2 years, and he's had Joe Milton in his QB room and meeting every single day and learning and all that, that's where they trust Joe Milton. It's not – look, I was talking to a couple people inside the building. It's like, okay, yeah, he overthrew some passes on Saturday. He wasn't really calm in certain circumstances. But the thing that gives Tennessee fans, in my opinion, a piece of chill out is that Josh Heupel is the one that trusts him to do this. If Josh Heupel didn't, probably would have gone out and got themselves another quarterback in the transfer portal. But they didn't. They trusted Joe Milton to do it. So I just look at it as 2 years of culmination getting to this point. But there's also something that stands behind that. Josh Heupel's not going to let this season go to hell in a handbasket if he thinks he can give his backup quarterback a shot at this thing, and all of a sudden, Nico plays and he's decent, but he's getting better over time. You don't want to, but then on the flip side of that, and this is just a very honest opinion, the first time Josh Heupel yanks Joe Milton from a game, that is it for Joe Milton. There's no coming back from that. So that's why you're going to see him have a very, very long leash when it comes to being on that field. He stuck around the program for 2 years. He was a starter 2.5 years ago. He hasn't, he's learned everything Josh Heupel can. He's been, like a son figure to him. But knowing that, okay, if you take him out, it's all about Nico. And Tennessee fans will just dive into that phenomenon that is Nico, and then they'll turn their back on Joe. Not in a mean way, but they'll say, well, wait a minute, if Heupel's doing this, then we got to roll with it. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me, too, about Milton. And then when you look at it from a net, look, when you lose Jalen Hyatt, who was playing last night for the Giants, who looked like absolute shit, not him, but the Giants did. And then you've got Ced Tillman that's out there playing for the Browns this season. He's going to be a factor. And you're returning guy, Velus Jones was there. He's with the Bears now. Your returning guy, was Brew McCoy, the USC transfer, who looked solid last year. You got a guy like Squirrel White, who's a speedster. I think everybody saw him in the Orange Bowl game, make a couple of great plays. And you got a guy like Ramel Keaton, who feels like he's been around Knoxville for 8 years. And he's somebody reliable that Joe Milton can count on. I think when you try to weigh out the difference between last year and this year is that, again, I go back to it. It's like the offensive line might not be as good as last season, but they do have the running backs to be able to offset what the passing did last year. Like, it's not going to be a ground and pound from Tennessee, but it does set you up very nicely to be able to throw the play action in there. I promise you, in the first 5 plays of the game, Tennessee's probably going to test Florida twice downfield. And I'm very interested to see if there's separation on that outside. Look, it's a complicated matchup because there's so many unknowns. There's unknowns for Tennessee. There's unknowns for Florida. Tennessee's going to try to just bulldoze Graham Mertz on Saturday. Put as much pressure as they can on him, force him to make mistakes inside the pocket and outside the pocket, and get him on the run. The Tennessee does have some experienced secondary players and linebackers to be able to get up and get pressure. But one of the biggest things to me is that can Tennessee go turnover free? If they go down there and they put the ball on the ground 2 or 3 times, Florida's going to win the football game. If they can prevent that, then I think Tennessee has a shot. Again, not predicting Tennessee to win. I'm actually just going to go ahead and predict Florida to win right now. I don't even care about how many points, just because Tennessee hasn't proved they can do it.
Don't do that, Trey.
You heard it here first. Trey Wallace of Outkick says Florida 65, Tennessee 0.
Tennessee's only beaten Florida 5 times ever in Gainesville.
Yeah,
dude, that's bad. Like, you got Tennessee fans who will not travel to Florida, not because of the fans or not because of the heated remarks that they might receive in a tug. They just know, damn, they go to Florida, there's probably a good chance you're losing that football game by something crazy ass happening.
Yeah, wasting that bread. What's your opinion on the Florida Gator offense so far, Trey?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I've texted Nick a couple times about this, and I feel like they got to one-dimensional in a sense against Utah with the way that they were, Graham Mertz gets in trouble. What's the first thing you do? He throws a bubble screen. He gets outside the pocket. You're running a 5-7 yard out. To me, they got to open it up a little bit more, man. They have got to be able, Corey, to 20-yard outs. Make the secondary get tested. Now, look, I'm going to go back and watch some film of their game this past weekend. I was caught up doing another game, but going off that Utah game, and I know it's one game, but I look at Graham Mertz and I think, okay, this is the same quarterback that we saw at Wisconsin, but he's in a different formation. He's got more room to be better. I give Florida credit for that. Throwing him in shotgun. Now and then you're running a read option with Graham Mertz and whatnot. But then, the Florida receivers have got to find him space. And if they can do that, I think they can against the Tennessee secondary, then that gives them the opportunity, gives him the opportunity to be successful. But, my biggest concern is if Tennessee brings 6 and gets after Mertz, what kind of mistake is he going to make? Because Tennessee is faster on defense than they were in the past. Now, Tennessee does not have, I like to call it, an FU player, a guy that when he gets off the bus, that sumbitch is going to be tough all game long. Right. They don't have that right now along the defensive line. That's what kind of worries me. They got off the edge, they'll be fine, but just straight up the middle defensive line, no. So it's Graham Mertz can have success against Tennessee, but he's going to have to be a hell of a lot better than what I've seen to win in the SEC, which you guys all know that.
No doubt.
It's interesting to me when you mentioned that about the receivers getting separation. I don't know that we've seen that from Florida in a good way this year, and I don't think we saw it for the 4 years that Billy Gonzalez was coaching receivers for Dan Mullen. And I think Billy's a great coach. You look at how many guys he's put in the league, but that's been an issue, I guess, 5 out of the last 6 years. And 5 of those years are when Billy Gonzalez, listen, they didn't get a ton of separation last year either. But that'll be something to watch for. I think Graham Mertz, and we've said this, it's a dirty word, I don't think it should be, is a game manager. I don't know that if you force Graham Mertz to win you a game, I don't know that he can. Not saying he can't, but I don't know that he can. I think Florida got back to its identity last week and running the football. And then I think if you can get Tennessee to commit to that running game, then I think Graham Mertz does have the capability to hit a play action, hit some deeper passes. But Florida's going to have to establish the running game, something they weren't able to do against a big physical front seven in Salt Lake City.
But Nick, do you think that, okay, let's just put it on the line here. There's a minute and 59 seconds left on the clock in the fourth quarter, and Florida needs to drive the field and get in the field goal range. Is Graham Mertz right now, has he shown you that he can be the guy that can start you off at the, let's just say 20-yard line and drive you 60, 65 yards to get you set up?
We have 8 minutes. Our pace of play is slow.
Yeah.
But Graham Mertz's ability, I think, I think he could get us in field goal range.
Right.
I've seen
competition. What's field goal range for Florida right now?
That's why I asked. I don't know what field goal range is for Florida.
Yeah. I don't know, but I think he get us into what normal.
You're missing 31 yarders in Salt Lake in some thin air. So, what is field goal range?
Yeah, I don't know what the special teams is like. What happens once he gets there? But I think Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz. Yeah, right. I think Graham Mertz is good enough to get us in position to win with a minute. The coaches, urgency, all that matters. But his skill set, I like his ball placement. The one interception he did have wasn't on. It hit the receiver. Timing could have been better. That's between the chemistry and the receiver. But technically, ball hits your hands, you got to catch it, and that hit Pearsall in his hands and face mask. Ends up being an interception. But I just haven't seen him put us in bad positions. Make oops, even though there was a time where this is not to compare the two, but when Kyle Trask was on his incredible run, it was a lot of dropped interceptions, and we were just like, whoa, a lot. And I'm just not seeing a risky kid that's going to turn over the ball a lot. Are we playing somewhere possibly safe? I don't know. I do want to see us stretch the field more, but those intermediate throws to move the sticks, and keep a drive alive, yeah, he got that in his bag. I just want to see him stretch the field a little bit more and see the offense get more explosive. But I think our answer to that is going to be Trey Wilson this week. I think there's a lot of design stuff that they're going to have for him that we haven't seen so far. Week 1 was, his coming out party. He only got a couple touches, but he didn't start. He started last week. Every time he touches the ball, like everybody's on there at the edge of their seat waiting for him to, break one. So I think he's going to be the X factor in this game. How many touches we could get him if the inside running game struggles? I think he could get on the edge and get some jet sweeps. If he gets in a position where one of your linebackers you don't feel good about and it's a one-on-one situation, I think he could take something, and grab it in space versus a linebacker, make him miss and go to the crib. So that's my overall take. I think we're going to be able to run the ball decent. We're not going to be in full-fledged form back. We'll get our center back, so that'll help us a little bit. But I think we got to get, the long bubble screens to work for us to extend the running game and also get some running out on the edge. And that'll loosen up the middle some. But I think somebody like Trey Wilson has to be the X factor this week.
I just know Nick wants Tennessee to punt about 12 times on Saturday just so he can
left
see
foot and right foot.
There
baby.
you go.
Does
Exactly.
he have a dominant foot or
Electric playmaker. Tennessee fans are telling me his left foot's been better this year. Use both feet, same time. Show me what kind of athlete you are. Earn this Ray Guy vote this week.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I've ever noticed what leg a kicker is kicked with.
That's a good point.
Do you ever watch and be like, man, we have a lefty kicker this year. We're on.
Yeah, you got a good, man.
Tennessee's got a switch hitter this weekend. That'd
Off
be fun and
speed kick.
interesting.
Just the possibly the most dynamic player in college football.
Potentially, Nick.
We know who Nick's going after for the post-game interview on Saturday, period.
He's by himself. Yeah. His family's not even there. Trey, I know you've got to run, my friend. Let everybody know where they can follow and read all your stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on X, Twitter, whatever the hell you call it, at Trey Wallace _. Follow all my work at Outkick.com. Just posted a great fun story on Mel Tucker, which is an absolute shit show in East Lansing. So just wild stuff, and look forward to being in Gainesville this weekend. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Trey. And we'll see you in Gainesville this week.